iDriveSoCal is brought to you by the very best auto retailers from across Southern California. When it's time for you to buy, or even just kick the tires on the idea of buying, just go to iDriveSoCal.com and click on dealers. iDriveSoCal.com, click on dealers, and get connected. Now, on with the podcast.
They're something of a prestige item. People love to show them off. You get a lot of comments. And they're really channeling some of the design influences from the early era of motorcycling. And I was really channeling the bikes of 1910, the board track racers, as they were known. And LA was kind of the center of that in those days. And like you say, it was just at the beginning of the time when motorcycles were starting to have custom-built frames around the motors instead of just attaching a motor to a regular bicycle frame. And those early motorcycles had pedals still on them. They were often pedal start, depending on the bike. It'll recharge in 90 minutes to 2 hours. And I use a safer chemistry lithium battery, anywhere from 22 to 30 miles without pedaling a stroke.
Welcome to iDriveSoCal, the podcast all about mobility from the automotive capital of the United States, Southern California. I'm Tom Smith, and joining me today is David Toomey. David is the CEO and founder of a really cool company that's a bike. It's an electric bike, and the company's called Juicer. And Juicer is working out of the LA Clean Tech Incubator. David, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
So tell me about Juicer, kind of high level, and then we'll drill down a little bit more.
Well, Juicer is an electric bike company that makes powerful electric cruiser bikes. So these are bikes that are meant to commute in or be your weekend ride. And they're not just A to B. They're something of a prestige item. People love to show them off. You get a lot of comments. And they're really channeling some of the design influences from the early era of motorcycling.
And they do that very well. They look like, I'm from the Midwest, so I've been to the Harley-Davidson Museum and some of their really old stuff that back then you had a hard time making out if it was a bicycle or if it was a motorcycle. And your designs are beautiful and retro, I guess, and way retro.
Right. Yeah. When I started in 2010, I was really channeling the bikes of 1910, the board track racers, as they were known. And LA was kind of the center of that in those days. And like you say, it was just at the beginning of the time when motorcycles were starting to have custom-built frames around the motors instead of just attaching a motor to a regular bicycle frame. And those early motorcycles had pedals still on them. They were often pedal start. And today they'd be considered mopeds. But I still think they're maybe the most cherished era of classic motorcycles.
You're a designer, right?
That's right.
So the engineering aspect of this is something that you farm out or something that you just self-teach? Or I get the design part. They're beautiful, they're appealing, and you're also a one-man band for the most part, right?
That's right. Yeah, I didn't really have the technical expertise when I first wanted to build an EV, so I had to teach myself. And let's cast our memory back to those heady days of 2008, 2009, when there really were no EVs on the road. Tesla had just started, but by the end of 2009, I think they still hadn't have 200 cars on the road yet. So if you wanted an electric car, you had to make it yourself. And I wanted to make one. I wanted to have one. And I had an idea of sort of a hot rod electric car. And the thing about hot rods is, especially our parents and grandparents' version of a hot rod, is they would take a car that was sort of dorky, like a Model A or a Model T,
Sure.
and they would subtract from it so you could see the engine. They'd rip the hood off and throw it away. And that's what I wanted to do with like a Volkswagen. I figured a Super Beetle was the perfect platform for me to put an array of batteries with the plug wires coming out and just display it right there in front instead of trying to hide it. And so I caught wind of a free lecture being done by Michael Brown, who self-published a book called Convert It, where he walks you through the process of making your own EV out of a donor car. I took notes, I bought his book, and I looked around and decided that my garage was too small to do a car project, so I switched to bikes, and the rest is juicer history.
But this is a business for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because it sounded like it started from a very hobbyist, just kind of, hey, this is my passion kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm not making scads of money, but I am making multiple bikes and they're all selling, and I'm getting more and more customers, people who have their own ideas. My last bike was a corporate commission. So yeah, I don't know what else to tell you about that. I would like to expand, but I haven't found the right strategic partnership yet.
Okay. So ding, ding, ding. Strategic partners. We have an open ear here from David, it sounds like.
That's right.
You started officially, so you mentioned 0809 was when you were thinking electric car and then switched to the bike. And you told me off mic, 2010 is when you started, right?
Yeah, my first bike was completed in 2010. I incorporated a year or two later. Juicer Electric Motorbicycles is a limited liability company.
All right. How many bikes have you made since 2010?
Just about 10 bikes. I do about 1 or 2 bikes a year. Some of them, if I reuse the designs, they go more quickly. But to keep it fun for me, I'm just constantly developing and adding features. You know, I've gone from modifying off-the-shelf frames to making fully custom frames, gone from rigid bikes to fully articulated full suspension.
Yeah, you were showing me on the website the one that's actually full suspension for off-road. And we're talking about some of the single track out in the Santa Monica Mountains here in Southern California that the bike can definitely handle.
Yeah. My hill climber bike has great suspension, telescopic forks, everything you need. And the idea for that is that you would ride up the hill on battery power, and then when you run out of juice, you just coast back down and maybe regen some of that power back into your pack so you can complete your journey, maybe not even pedal at all.
So on that note, let's talk a little bit about the battery. Is this plug into the wall, any old wall socket?
Correct. I use separate chargers. So yeah, you can plug it in anywhere into the wall. Depending on the bike, it'll recharge in 90 minutes to 2 hours. And I use a safer chemistry lithium battery, a lithium iron phosphate, which handles all kinds of abuse without catching fire. And that's one of the ways I limit my liability.
And a full charge is going to get you approximately how far? I know you have different size batteries.
Yeah, anywhere from 22 to 30 miles without pedaling a stroke.
And what is the regen capabilities when you're pedaling or when you're going downhill?
I'm still tinkering with my uphill bike as far as the regen. I want to get to a place where it's variable regen so you can roll it on. There's some technical hurdles there. But most of my bikes, in fact, all the rest, I allow you to coast when you roll off the power. And in almost every case, you will have a further range if you're able to coast rather than working against the motor when you roll off the power.
So then is the regeneration exclusive to the off-road bike for hills?
That's
gotcha.
right.
Okay. And you said 22, 25 miles?
25 is a good average. You have to keep in mind that most of the bike manufacturers, when they quote you a range, they'll say with moderate pedaling.
Right.
And I do all my range testing with no pedaling at all, because to me, that's the only honest number you can get.
And then, of course, being on the tail end of the holidays that we're recording this, it also would maybe factor in how much you weigh. If you've had a big holiday celebration, one after the other, and maybe an extra few pounds at the end of the...
Absolutely. Although, I don't know, F equals MA. Once you get however heavy you are, once you're accelerated, it takes not so much energy to keep you going. I do most of my testing on the bike path by the LA River, which is nice and flat, and you can just go until you are out of juice.
And you have 3 different motors?
I've done more than 3, but the main motor I use for the lower end model, the 50 state street legal model, is a Curry motor, which you can get in 750 or 1,000 watts. Most states only, if you want to call it an e-bike, only allow a 750 watt motor, which is equivalent to 1 horsepower. And then for my higher powered models, I've used E-Tech variants, but I'm moving more into AC or brushless DC motors because they are lower maintenance and they're a little more complicated, but seem to have higher efficiency and less maintenance.
And now the rules and regulations on a per motor basis. We were talking about this a little bit off mic, but run me through it again now that we're on.
Well, California is a great place to be a e-biker or a moped guy in that you don't have to have any special licensing to ride a 1,000-watt electric bike. And 1,000 watts is pretty good. You can get up to speed on flat ground. Now, if you're willing to get your moped license or you already have your motorcycle license, you're allowed to have 3,000 watts, which is really fantastic. It becomes a real competent commuter bike at that point. The niche I really want to exploit is this 4-horsepower, 3,000-watt bike and try to get people out of their cars and onto basically an electric moped that can compete with traffic at rush hour.
That you may or may not have to have a license for, depending on the preferences of your configuration?
Well, at 3,000 watts, you're supposed to have a moped license, but you don't have to have insurance, and you register the bike once for I think it's $16, and that lasts a lifetime. They give you a little plate, and you're done. That's your entire interaction with the DMV as far as that vehicle is concerned.
So you've been doing this for 7 years. Is this your full-time gig? I mean, are you making a living off this thing?
I moonlight sometimes doing storyboards and other graphic work. But yeah, this is my passion, and this is where I put the bulk of my energy.
And is there a 3, 5, 10-year plan on the business, or is it so much of a passion and you're more artisan as opposed to, business?
I've blown through a few 3 and 5 year plans. So I would have to say at this point, it's the latter. But as you said earlier, my ears are open for the right collaboration.
I mean, when you explain it to me from a mass-produced kind of situation, I think along the lines of the customization that you could do to a Mini Cooper when those first came out and the big promotion that was behind that, really make it yours, customize it for you, and show your personality and your means of mobility kind of thing.
Absolutely. And that is one of the key points about Juicer is that it's a bike you can be proud of. It's a bike that you can tinker with, that you can customize, and that's something that we're not seeing in much of the other areas in the EV sector. We need more EV hot rods. We need more EV customs. And, I'm trying to provide an avenue for people to do that.
What is the price range of your Juicer bikes? It sounds like would vary quite a bit depending on the custom. I mean, because everything's custom, right? Absolutely everything.
Yeah. Well, the low end is $4,000 and the high end is, I guess my most expensive bike was $7,000, but I'm sure I could sell you something even more expensive.
Have there been any celebrity purchases or anything of the sort that you hang your hat on and like to mention?
Who's the guy who's in? Oh, Kurt Russell. I was at the LA Auto Show a couple years ago, and Kurt Russell came to my booth twice and had a lot of questions, but ultimately didn't pick up a bike.
All right. So you've been promoting actively at something like the LA Auto Show, other shows as well?
Yeah. I used to go to the hot rod shows because I feel like that's where my customer base should be. Because what I'm trying to do is take customers who normally wouldn't consider an electric vehicle. And so while a lot of e-bike companies are operating in the space where they compete with each other to grab each other's customers, I'm trying to grab customers that have never thought of, wouldn't think of themselves as clean commuters, let's say. And the way you get those people is by grabbing them through the eyeballs and grabbing them through the seat of the pants when they feel the power roll on a nice cruiser electric. So I would go to the classic auto shows. I would go to the Long Beach swap meet. I even did the Easy Riders motorcycle show one year, and I rolled in that classic looking white tired bike that I showed you, and they didn't even know it was electric at all. I thought they're going to turn me away at the gate, but instead I got a lot of looks and a lot of thumbs up. So there's potential there to get the gear heads, the petrol heads over to clean transportation.
With investment money, would you be open to more of a structure where, say, you have 3 different models from which you could customize?
Sure. There's a couple ways to do that, or even selling kits is another way to go. But absolutely, I want people to customize it. I want people to know that we or they can create a one-of-a-kind machine.
Why are EV bikes so hot right now?
Well, they're not as hot in America as they are in places like China, where it's just a very useful conveyance. But in Asia, the electric bike is seen as a stepping stone until they get a car. I think in America, most people who have electric vehicles are doing it out of a feeling of eco-rectitude. They want to be doing the right thing for the environment. And certainly, they're very economical to operate. So that's a great advantage. But like I say, I'm trying to get the people who have never considered an electric bike, and I want them to get it not because they have to ride something economical, but because they want to, because they like the feeling of going without having to pedal, and they like how their ride looks.
So we're here at the LA Clean Tech Incubator, and you are technically one of their portfolio companies.
That's right.
Tell me about that structure of your agreement.
I joined the Clean Tech Incubator about 4 years ago, and they've mentored me a bit. And a year ago, they opened this advanced prototyping center, which for the first time really gave me access to some higher tech machinery. And so I've sort of set up shop here, and I'm hosting the welding lab. And suddenly I'm building bikes using tools a little more sophisticated than my angle grinder.
That just sounds like something I should chuckle at, because an angle grinder must be an old school tool.
You'd be surprised how far you can get with an angle grinder. But yeah, no, it's great to have the access to the mill and some of the other high tech machinery.
And in exchange for your access to their resources, including their tools, as well as their space, as well as their mentorship and whatnot, they have a share of your company, or how does that?
Yeah, the Clean Tech Incubator has a contract with their companies that only upon the sale of the company do they get a percentage. So really, until then, it's just in their interest that your business succeed and grow.
And do you have a specific timetable that the LACI, which is short for LA Clean Tech Incubator, is having you work here? When did you start working?
I joined the incubator 4 years ago, but only moved in this past year as far as making bikes at the facility.
Do you guys sit down and re-up every year, or what does the timetable look like?
I have a month-to-month contract, but I'm very happy here, and there's great resources, great people here, and they really work with you to solve your engineering and manufacturing problems.
And on the sales front, you mentioned you've basically done a handful of bikes. Is there a geographic area that you find most of your bikes going to, or are they just staying local here? Who's buying?
Well, I've sold bikes internationally as well as on the far-flung coasts of this country, but I really prefer to have my customers be local just so I can give them the level of service that ensures that their bike continues to work and be ridden as often as they want. And the way I make these bikes is modular, so that really there's no reason why these bikes couldn't last forever, because any piece can be swapped out. Unlike most e-bikes where they have a proprietary pack where once it goes out, they've moved on to a new model, and you'd be lucky if you can find a replacement.
The bikes are 100% custom. When I come to you and say, "Hey, David, I want to build a bike," do we sit down and you sketch it out and start brainstorming some ideas with me?
Well, I think what I would do is I would show you some examples of bikes I've made and say, can we base it on this one or base it on that one, and go from there. I get a lot of people sending me emails saying, I have this Schwinn frame, and can you put a motor in it for me? And I'm not really willing to re-engineer every motor frame combination from scratch each time. So yeah, I'm going to lead you towards a couple of designs to choose from. And then from there, the sky's the limit, or there's as many options as your imagination has.
And what's a typical turnaround from the time that we sit down and sketch something out or get a plan in place to the time that I'm riding?
It could be as quick as 6 months or as long as a year, but depending on the complexity of the build.
And right now, the bikes are available only on your website, or do you have any physical place that prospective customers can come in, touch, feel, maybe test ride? At
the moment, they're just available online. The best place to find me is on the web, juicer.bike.
Juicer.bike.
That's right.
Juicer.bike. JUICER.BIKE.
That's it.
I guess there's all kinds of, forget about the .com, forget about the .net.
That's so 1992.
How about social media? Do you have, are you Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, any of that?
I am on Tumblr and Instagram.
Okay.
And you can find those links at the bottom of my webpage.
Do you know what they are off the top of your head?
On Instagram, I am Flugelwagen. That's German for flying car. And on Tumblr, I may be the same.
Flugelwagen. Do you want to spell that by chance?
Flugelwagen.
Okay.
Oh, no, Tumblr, I don't even know her. So IDONTEVENER.
David Toomey, CEO, founder of Juicer, completely custom electric bikes, very cool, very retro. And if you want to have one built, they're not a short turnaround, but I've seen it. I've sat on one. It is a very special piece. It's almost more artistry, I think, than anything that I've seen out there to date. So again, CEO, founder of Juicer is David Toomey. David, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And if you are interested in the Juicer bikes, it is juicer.bike. You can also follow him and Juicer on Tumblr and Instagram.
Flugelwagen on Instagram, and I don't even know her on Tumblr.
Yeah. So probably the juicer.bike route's going to be the best way to
That's
go.
your best bet.
But David, thanks again for joining me. Most appreciated.
Tom, it's been great talking to you. Thank you very much.
I'm Tom Smith. This is iDriveSoCal. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time.
This episode was engineered and edited by Micah Palmquist.